ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदादतं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः। Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The very first meeting of M, Master Moshe, the record of the Gospel, with Sri Ramakrishna, he is positioning himself, as we said, in time and place, sometime in March 1882. The very first impression which M got of Ramakrishna's conversation, his presence, is that it was as if Shukadeva was talking about the God's glories in the Bhagavatam with his devotees and disciples, or as if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Premier Avatar, the incarnation of divine love, was discussing godly subjects with his disciples in the Puri Kshetra. Sri Ramakrishna was talking about when work will cease, karma tyag kakhon. The moment you utter the name of God, with divine ecstasy, absorption in God, your mind being elevated and deeply absorbed in God consciousness, tears flow down your cheeks, there is horripilation on the body, the hairs on your body stand on end. Then you will know that you do not any longer have to perform any action. Then he adds, action, work drops away by itself. Karma apna apni tyag hoye jaye. This is very important to note, because if you forcefully try to give up work out of your sankalpa, then you injure yourself. The Lord knows how long He will keep you in work and when He will release you from the bondage of karma. Sri Ramakrishna used to give a very striking example, illustration, in the Kathamrita later on. When the daughter-in-law is in the family way carrying the child, the mother-in-law relieves her from her duties. An advanced state of pregnancy, she is almost completely released from all action, and when the child is born, she has no other work except fondling the child, suckling the child, caressing the child, taking care of the child. What a wonderful illustration, just a simple illustration which we see every day in this world. What is the meaning? When the spiritual aspirant from the sadhaka, advancing in the path of God, becomes more and more drawn to God, as a big magnet is drawing small iron filings and needle, etc., the mind of the sadhaka is being drawn to God. When it moves nearer and nearer to God, gets more and more absorbed, feels no interest in any worldly activity, doesn't enjoy the worldly pleasures anymore, can't even just stand worldly conversation. People are discussing worldly things. Kamini Kanchana, woman and gold, about lust and greed, money, position, power. He just can't stand it. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Kaan jala phala kore. That means the ears, as it were, get burnt up listening to worldly conversation. Then he can't engage himself in activity anymore, which are worldly, which are calculated for some worldly gain. Then he cries from within, "Oh God, release me from all this bondage and draw me closer and closer to you." Then God, out of infinite compassion, releases him from most of the actions usually done with desire in the world. And when the sadhaka gets so deeply absorbed and becomes closest to God, then God completely releases him from all action. The spiritual aspiration, when it grows in the heart and flowers and blossoms and is full bloom, then God releases him from action and he dwells constantly in God. He talks about God, moves in God, meditates upon God, converses about God, and passes on the divine inspiration to whoever comes in his contact. Then karma drops away by itself. The quotation from Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana, which is given in the commentary in the second shloka, verse of the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, by Sridhara Swami, the great commentator, in the Tika, is Na karmani tyajet yogi karmabhis tyajyate hyaso. Yogi karmani na tyajet. Yogi does not give up work. Karmabhi aso tyajyate. He is given up by work. Work comes to him and say, "Goodbye, sir, I am leaving." Because you are so absorbed in God, you can't work anymore. This happened tellingly in Ramakrishna's own life. He started as a pujak in the Kali temple. He was worshipping the mother with flowers, with sandal paste, with mantras. Slowly the absorption in God became so deep that he could not perform rituals anymore. The moment he sat on the asana, the seat of the pujak, worshipper, the moment he began to chant the mantras, the hymn to Kali, he completely lost himself in samadhi, could not complete the worship. Then the Divine Mother released him from all action. Then Sri Ramakrishna goes on to comment, in that state of mind, if one just chants the name of Hari or Rama, it is enough. Or even just pure, simple Pranava or Om. Ki Harinam, ki Ramnam, অথবা শুদ্ধ ওঙ্কার জপলেই হয়. Look at every word, every syllable, every sentence in the Gospel, in the Kathamrita. They are so profound, so significant, so full of meaning. Only we do not have the capacity to be able to understand the depths of this meaning. Swami Vivekananda once said, from every sentence which Ramakrishna spoke, volumes and volumes of books can be written. So profound are his words. Shuddha Onkar Jopli Hai. Just pure Om. The Upanishads tell us, the Vedas tell us, that Om is the essence of the entire Veda. There's a beautiful verse in the Kathopanishad, which the Bhagavan Sri Krishna repeats again in the Bhagavad Gita. Sarve Veda yat padamamananti tapamsi sarvani cha yad vadanti yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena bravimi Om ityetat. Kathopanishad. Sarve Veda yat padamamananti tapamsi sarvani cha yad vadanti yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena pravakshe. Bhagavad Gita. Sarve Veda yat padamamananti. All the Vedas speak about this great state of consciousness embodied by Om. Tapamsi sarvani cha yad vadanti. All the various penances, austerities, spiritual practices, all of them are oriented towards this one state embodied by Om. Idichanto brahmacharyam charanti, desiring which the sadhakas, the celibates, practice spiritual austerities and the direct command and the supervision of their mentors or masters, the acharyas, the gurus in the Gurukula. Tatte padam sangrahena bravimi. That supreme state of consciousness I will tell you in brief, very briefly. What is that? Om ityetat. That is Om. Kathopanishad. The Brahma Vidya Acharya, Yama tells Nachiketa. What is the beauty of this Om? What is the greatness of this Om? He goes on to say, Etadhyevaksharam Brahma, Etadhyevaksharam Param, Etadhyevaksharam Gyatva, Yo Yadichyate Tasya Tat. Etadhyevaksharam Brahma. This one akshara, this one syllable, Om, is Brahman. Etadhyevaksharam Param. This is the supreme. There Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankaracharya says, it is Brahman, there is Apara Brahman, Saguna Brahman, Param, Parabrahman, the supreme Brahman. Brahman is spoken of as two, although it is one. The Bhashyakara Shankaracharya speaks about it in the Brihadaranyaka Bhashya. Murtam cha, dve brahmani rupe. Brahman has two rupa. Brahmanaha dve rupe. Of Brahman there are two forms. Murtam cha, amurtam cha. One is Murta with form, with qualities. Other is Amurta, without form, without qualities. And both of them belong to the same reality. Let us not imagine that one is superior, the other is inferior. Although the word apara and para are used, it is not in the sense of inferior or superior. There is no superiority or inferiority in apara Brahman and para Brahman. The two aspects of the same reality. One is qualityless, nirguna, formless, amurta, nirakara. The other is with quality, saguna, murta with form. And the infinite reality is both with form and without form. In the very next meeting, Sri Ramakrishna is going to tell M. God is both with form and without form. তিনি সাকার, তিনি নিরাকার, সাকার নিরাকারের পারে আরো কত কি। In Bengali he says, he is with form, he is without form, he is both with form and without form, he is beyond both form and form without form, and how many more things besides. Don't put a limit on God's infinity. Bhagavanir anantattir iti korona. Don't put a full stop and say God is this and cannot be that. Infinite is the reality. Infinite is the varieties and aspects of truth. And infinite, therefore, the paths to reach this reality. Tini ananta or patho ananto. And describing Sri Ramakrishna's own real nature, Swami Vivekananda writes in that beautiful hymn, which he composed for all the followers and devotees and admirers of Ramakrishna to chant every day during the Aratrikam. Swami Vivekananda refused to write a biography or a life history of Sri Ramakrishna. Once Girish Chandra Ghosh told him, why don't you describe Ramakrishna, the real nature of Ramakrishna, in a short biography? Swami Vivekananda trembled with fear and said, GC, that is Girish Chandra, GC, you ask me to dry up this ocean, I will do this. You ask me to pounder this mountain, to reduce it to dust, I shall do that. But do not ask me to write a biography of the Master. How little have I understood him. But he left an immortal poem, stotra, in the form of Khandana Bhava Bandhana Jaga Vandana Vandi Tomai, which all over the world, all the devotees of Ramakrishna and all the centers of Ramakrishna order, affiliated, unaffiliated, every day this is chanted, which gives the real picture of what Ramakrishna was, a glimpse into it. Niranjana nararupadhara nirguna gunamay. Niranjana nararupadhara. Niranjana is without any anjana, without any spot, completely pure, sattva, formless, qualityless, but Nararupadhara, taking a human form. Nirguna, beyond all qualities. Triguna Atita, beyond Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Turiya Chaitanya, infinite in the absolute. But at the same time, he is Gunamaya, is full of divine qualities. Bhaswara Bhava Sagara Chira Unmada Prema Pathar Bhaktarjana Jugala Charana Tarana Bhavapar. Immortal lines. Bhaswara, luminous. Bhava Sagara, ocean of infinite, divine, exalted spiritual moods. Chira Unmada, always immersed in divine ecstasy, madness of love. Prema Pathar is the ocean of divine love and prema. Imagine that kind of a vast, infinite ocean, formless, qualityless, but full of divine love, ecstasy. That ocean, which is not easily imaginable by the ordinary human mind, beyond the mind and the senses, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha, where the speech and other senses cannot reach beyond the mind, that infinite, vast, formless ocean becomes God of love. Bhaktarjana Jugala Charana. These two divine, blessed feet of Ramakrishna, the Charana, Jugala Charana, these 2 feet, Tarana Bhavapar. This Bhavasagara, terrible to cross, becomes easy to cross by the grace of Ramakrishna. He is Nirguna, he is Saguna, he is infinite, and at the same time, he appears in the finite human body. This is the secret of divinity. What it actually is cannot be imagined. You can only feel it within in a very small way. And these great lines by Swami Vivekananda help us to get a glimpse into it. Bhaktarjana Jugala Charana Tarana Bhavapara. Ramakrishna says, therefore, Shuddha Onkar Jopli Hai. Etadhye Vaksharam Brahma, Etadhye Vaksharam Param. The Om is both the Parabrahman and the Aparabrahman, both the supreme, absolute, infinite Brahman and the relative Brahman called the Hiranyagarbha or Ishvara, Saguna, Sakara or Nirakara. The entire gamut of divine consciousness called God is covered by this one statement, one syllable called Om. That's why the Mandaka Upanishad begins by saying, Om ityedadaksharam Brahma. This Brahman is verily, there's one akshara, one syllable called Om. The glory of Om is described in so many Upanishads and the scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita. Om ityevadaksharam Brahma, Om ityevadaksharam Param, Etadhyevaksharam Brahma, Etadhyevaksharam Param, Etadhyevaksharam Gyatva. Knowing and realizing this one syllable Om in its aspects of Parabrahman and Aparabrahman, Yo yadichhati tasya tat. Whatever he wants to be, he is. After realizing both the relative and the absolute, the qualityless and the qualities, Saguna and Nirguna, Sakara and Nirakara, realizing God in so many aspects represented by Om, you remain in any bhava, any mood as you like. Yo yadichhati tasya tat. Then he goes on to say, Kathopanishad, Etadalambanam shreshtham, Etadalambanam param, Etadalambanam gyatva, Brahmaloke mahiyate. What happens to a person? He attains Brahmaloka and attains great glory. And he may also go beyond Brahmaloka, the infinite and the absolute, the Turiyatita, and again come back to the Brahmaloka. And that divine incarnation chooses to be born as a human being so that we can realize him. Ramanuja has a beautiful simile. The elephant is so tall, so majestic, so big. A Mahot, the rider of the elephant, wants to climb the elephant. So the elephant obliges him by coming down, sitting quietly, becoming low, so that he can jump into his feet and again gets up. All of you have seen this. Exactly the same way, the infinite and the absolute, Supreme Lord, who is in the Brahmaloka and beyond, he comes down as it were, so that he can be accessible to us. This accessibility, easily being attained by God, is called Saulabhya. Sulabha means easy. Saulabhya is easiness. One of the important qualities of Saguna Brahman or God is a saulabhya. He is so easy of access. Now during the online education, the internet studies and so on, what is most vital is connectivity and access. I don't have internet access. A common thing you can hear from students. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not able to access the net. What does it mean? Accessibility, saulabhya, is most important. If God is infinite and supreme, powerful, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, sarvashaktiman, sarvagya, sarvavyapi, sarvatita, but he is not accessible, what kind of God is he? How useful he can be to me? I don't want that God who I can't reach. I want that God who can be reached easily, accessed easily, who obliges me and who answers my prayers. A responsive God, responsible God. Although he doesn't have any responsibility, but he is responsible because he is responsive. He responds. Believe in this. In the Kathamrita, Sri Ramakrishna says repeatedly, Tini kaan khodke, Tini pipader nupur dhoni parjanta shunte pan. He is quick-eared. He listens to the sound of the footfall of an ant. Think of a small ant. It moves in the floor, and when the ant touches the floor and starts moving, a small sound is made, and God is so quick-eared, kaan khodke, that he can hear the footfall of an ant. What a striking simile. If he can hear the foot sounds of a small ant, will he not listen to the cries of this innocent sadhaka? The devotee is crying to God and praying to him. Is he so merciless, so cruel that he will not respond and hear us, listen to us? Believe in this. Sri Ramakrishna says, he listens and he does respond. But you should cry hard enough. He also has a beautiful simile in the Kathamrita, the Gospel. When the child is busy playing with a toy, Lal Chushi bolchen. So you give a lollipop, give a small balloon, and then he keeps on sucking it and then moving around and playing. The mother is busy cooking in the kitchen. Now when she sees the child is happy playing with the toys. Suddenly she hears the cries of the child. The baby has thrown away all the toys and said, "No, ma, 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 ma." Then immediately she leaves the cooking, takes the cooking pot from the oven and rushes to the child and takes the child in her arms. What a beautiful, simple simile, so telling and so real and so touching. We are happy in the world playing with our little toys, with our bank balance, with our credit cards, with our cars, without position and power and money, and all our relatives, with our cell phones, with our computers. We are absolutely happy. We don't cry, and therefore God says, my child is happy with his little toys, which I have provided him so that he can be joyful. Let him play. When you say, like Swami Vivekananda, "Oh mother, my play is done, break my bonds and make me free. Vivekananda's famous poem, My Play is Done. Khelamor Sesh, in Bengali translation, original is in English. My play is done. Last line is, oh mother, my play is done. Break my bonds and make me free. When you cry within with a real cry and say, oh, my play is done. I don't want these playthings of the world anymore. I have had enough. Enough is enough. Alam pratyayavan. I have had enough. Now I want you. I want to throw away all these various playthings. Then God rushes to you. Brahmaloke mahiyate, having known this Omkara in its para and apara aspects, saguna and nirguna aspects, murta and amurta aspects, absolute and relative aspects, Ishvara and the Parabrahma aspects, he rejoices with the highest bliss of Brahman and Brahmaloka. Etadhyevaksharam Brahma, etadhyevaksharam param, etadhyevaksharam gyatva yo yadicchati tasya tat, etadalambanam sreshtham, etadalambanam param, etadalambanam gyatva brahmaloke mahiyate. Kathopanishad. Om ityedadaksharamidam sarvam. This Om is everything. Sarvam hetad Brahma, ayam Atma Brahma. Second mantra. Om is everything, idam sarvam. Second mantra, sarvam hi etad Brahma. Om equal to sarvam, and sarvam equal to Brahman. Therefore, Om equal to Brahman. Ayam Atma Brahma, and this Atman is the same as Brahman. So a beautiful equation. The first two mantras of the Mandukya Upanishad. Om ityetad iksharam midam sarvam, Om equal to sarvam. Sarvam hi etad Brahma, sarvam equal to Brahma. Ayam Atma Brahma, Brahma equal to Atma. So you have a simple formula, an equation, Om equal to Sarvam, equal to Brahman, equal to Atman. You can take it 2 by 2 if you like. Atman equal to Brahman is one equation. Om equal to Sarvam is one equation. Sarvam equal to Brahman is another equation. Om equal to Brahman is another equation. Om equal to Atman is another equation. There are 4. Take 2 by 2. So you know in permutations and combinations and mathematics, some of you must have studied, you have 4C2. So you have 4 equations. These are simple formulae given in the Upanishads, and these arise from the realizations of these great rishis, which Sri Ramakrishna puts in such simple language. Shuddha Onkar Jopuli Hoy. Shuddha Onkar means pure Onkara. Etat Sarvam, this entire world of relative and absolute. Saguna and Nirguna, Murta and Amurta, Sakara and Nirakara, outward and inward, everything is only Om, Sarvam. So, when you get a highest state of consciousness, all karma drops away. You chant the name of Hari, chant the name of Ram, and go still higher. Even that drops away. You chant Shuddha Pranava. Shuddha Onkar Jopli Hoy. Shuddha Pranava, Shuddha Om. Then he makes a very, very profound statement which we'll take up slowly. Perhaps it may take months and years to explain this one statement in the Kathamrita. The very first meeting, Sri Ramakrishna gives this instruction to everybody, including M. Shondha Gayatri te loy hoy, Gayatri abar Onkare loy hoy. Two statements. He is saying that all the names of gods, Hari, Ram, etc., all of them merge into Om, and the sadhaka, the devotee, the spiritual aspirant, just chants pure Om. This is the highest practice. Aksharana, Makarosmi, etc., Bhagavan says, I remain as Pranava. And this Pranava is called the supreme truth of all the Vedas. Yas chandasam rishabho vishvarupaha chandobhyodhyamritaat sambabhova samendro medhaya aspranoto amritasya devadharano bhuyasam shariram me vicharshanam jikhva me madhumattama karna bhuri vishruvam brahmana koshosi medhaya pihita shrutam me gopaya. A wonderful mantra from the Taittiriya Upanishad, which Shankaracharya says in his commentary, in his bhashya, this mantra is meant for japa. A long mantra. Cut it short, it becomes just Om. Yes, Chandasam Rishabha. Rishabha is the supreme, the essence. Rishabha is the bull, the greatest, the glorious, the most powerful, the most luminous aspect of all the Vedas. Chandasam Rishabha Vishvarupaha, infinite. What is that? Om. Let Om inspire me, yes Chandasam Rishabho Vishvarupaha Medhaya Sprunotu. Let it touch me with Medha. The awakening of the Medha takes place when you continue to chant the Om. You feel your consciousness rising up. From the point of Tantra, they say the Kundalini rises from the Mooladhara, passes through Swadhisthana and Manipura and reaches the Anahata. When it reaches the Anahata, you hear a mysterious, uncreated, unstruck sound called the Anahata Dhvani, which is Om. Ahata means strike, struck. How is sound produced? Take two hands, you strike one against the other, sound is produced. Suppose I don't strike, no sound. All sounds are produced by ahata, by striking. Here is a sound which is not produced or created by striking, unstruck sound, and therefore uncreated sound. While striking, there is a beginning, there is an end. So if it is unstruck, it has no beginning, no end, is anadi and ananta. If it is anadi and ananta, beginningless and endless, this has to be shashvata, eternal, because it cannot begin and it has no end. If it is shashvata, it should be beyond time and space. If it is beyond time and space, it should be eternally going on in the whole universe. And it is. We don't have the ears to listen to this because our minds are constantly making sounds. We may be keeping quiet, closing the eyes and trying to meditate, but the mind is constantly chattering, clamoring, making noise. Thoughts are the greatest noises. When the mind calms down, becomes tranquil, chitta vritti nirodha takes place, and as the Yoga Sutra says, then when there is no noise in the mind completely becomes still, then from within the anahata dhvani comes up. Prashanta manasam henam yoginam sukhamuttamam upaiti shantarajasam brahma bhutam akalmasham. The Bhagavad Gita says, upaiti shantarajasam. When the rajas becomes completely eliminated, quelled, prashanta manasam, the mind becomes tranquil, calm, all thoughts come to an end, then the Omkara Dhvani is heard. Atma samstam manakritva na kanchidapi chintayet. The Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavan is instructing Arjuna, Atma samstam manakritva, make the mind Atma samstha, samyak sthita. Let the mind be fully, completely established in the Atman. We read about this in the very beginning of the study of the Kathamrita of the Gospel. Yogi Richokho, the eyes of a yogi, is comparing with a bird which is hatching the egg. Yogi Ramon Shvarvada Ishvarite Thake, Shvarvada Ishvarite Atmastha. The mind of a yogi is constantly poised in God, the Supreme Being, and always it is Atmastha, it is absorbed in the Atman within. When that state of mind comes to you, constantly you listen to the sound of Om. We have heard that Swami Shantanandaji, who was a saintly disciple of Sharada Devi, the Holy Mother. I have had the good fortune of having his darshan when he was a teenager at Belur Mutt. He used to say, he's constantly hearing the Anahata Dhvani. He used to ask us, Shunte parcho? Tumi shunte parcho? Mara kichu shunte parchi na Maharaj. Ami shunte pai, like a child. Do you listen? Do you hear the Anahata Dhvani? No, Maharaj, but I can hear constantly. That means the mind becomes purer and purer. The mind stays put in the Anahata. When the Kundalini arises, pierces from the Muladhara, pierces the Swadhisthana and the Manipura and comes to Anahata and stays put. It doesn't come down. So constantly the sound of Om, 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 Om. This is not an audible sound. The uncreated subtle sound which is called the Para. So much of literature is there and sound itself in our spiritual treasure in India. And sound itself, Nada, Nada Brahman. This one statement of Ramakrishna, Gayatri Omkare Loy Hoy, Shandha Gayatri Te Loy Hoy, Omkar Abar Gayatri Te Loy. Gayatri Omkare Loy Hoy, Shandha Gayatri Te Loy Hoy, Gayatri Abar Omkare Loy Hoy. Volumes can be written on this. Sound is divided into four aspects of the sound. I am now talking to you through this microphone. It is being carried to you through the internet, and wherever you are listening through the headphone or through the speaker in your computer or in the mobile phone, Android phone. So this sound which I am making, which is being carried to your ear, this physical sound is called Vaikhari, Vaikhari Shabda, Vaikhari Nada. if you go little deeper than the Kantha, which is the Vishuddha Chakra, in the Kantha, the sound remains as Madhyama, the middle. Then go still deeper. It is Pashyanti in the Hridaya or the Anahata. Go still deeper in the Manipura and the Muladhara. It remains as the Para. Para is the supreme Vak. Vak, the sound, speech, remains as Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, and gets expressed, articulated as Vaikhari. If you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and if you can stimulate the deeper aspects of Vak, then tremendous impression is made on the people who listen, and their life changes. When incarnations of God spoke, sang, when Swami Vivekananda used to speak, 10,000 people in the audience. It is said the kundalinis of all these people used to be roused, awakened. They entered into a totally different realm of consciousness. Because the power of Vak, because the Vak is coming from deep within. The classical musicians, you may see, those who are very highly classical, they practice and practice. And from the Nabhi, they try to raise this voice. You can see how they close their eyes and try to rouse this voice from within, from the Nabhi. Voice which comes from the Kantha or from the mouth, which is Vaikhari or Madhyama, that doesn't make an impact. You try to raise this voice from within, it requires a lot of sadhana, years and years of sadhana. And sound itself, Nada Brahman itself, volumes have been written, hundreds of practices have been prescribed in our scriptures, in Mantra Shastra, in Tantra Shastra, everything taken from Vedanta, Upanishads, Om. Then what happens? The heart lotus blooms. This is called the blooming of the Medha. This is called Dhi in the Gayatri Mantra. The awakening of the Om, Omkara, which is the Pranavadhvani, the Anahata Dhvani, unstruck, uncreated sound, comes about through Gayatri. What does Gayatri say? We know the Gayatri Mantra. The Dhi has to be awakened. Dhiyo yo naf prachodayat. Dhi is Srilinga Shabda in Sanskrit. Dhi, dhiyo, dhiyah. The plural of Dhi is dhiyah. And the Rishi says, not singular, me, but our. Naha asmakam dhiyah prachodayat. Asmakam, ours, dhiyah, the collective dhi, prachodayat, may it be awakened. May that Supreme Being awaken the dhi in all of us. Dhi is a very, very special faculty which could be translated into English as an intuitive faculty. Instinct, reason, intuition. These are the three layers in English. Instinct is the animal tendency. I feel hungry, I feel thirsty. So these are natural instincts which come to you. I feel sleepy. Ahara nidra bhaya maithunancha samanyametad. Pashubhir naranam. Pashu and nara, animal and man, a human being. Common. What are the common things? Four. Ahara, Food, when you feel hungry, thirsty, you take food and drink. Nidra, you feel sleepy. Bhaya, you feel terribly afraid. This corona is shaking us. Everybody is panicky, afraid. So much afraid. People want to meet each other, don't want to touch each other. They don't want to venture out in the streets. Fear of death, fear of infection. Ahara, Nidra, Bhaya and Maithuna, sensual pleasures. These are very common for both animals and human beings. What distinguishes a human being is a dharma, religion or spirituality. The cultivation of higher consciousness, the aspiration for raising the consciousness to higher levels, the deep longing to attain God. This is very special only to a human being. So the prayer is Dhyo Yona Prachodaya, let the Dhi be awakened in all of us. Who will do this? Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargaha Dhimahi. We meditate Dhimahi. On what? Varenyam Bhargaha. Varenyam, adorable, worshipful, great, luminous, vast. Bhargaha, luminosity, effulgence. Effulgence of what? Savitur Varenya, Savituhu. Savitra is the Surya, the sun. Tat Savitur, that Surya. Not this ordinary Surya which we see every day, but the Surya which is the luminosity behind this Surya, the divine luminosity, the divine light, which is the Surya Devata. Once again, I have to digress a little and give you an idea of how the Indian rishis thought of every object as a threefold. Adi Bhautika, Adhyatmika, Adi Daivata. Everywhere you will find this. This is related to the microcosm and the macrocosm, which is a very vast subject. In fact, this sentence of Ramakrishna, Shandha Gayatri te loyha, Gayatri abar Onkare loyha, we can go on for years. How many different dimensions are there in this? Let's see how far we can go, how deep we can go with a little intellect and little power of analysis. And with the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, we should be able to understand even a little of this great statement. This is a Mahavakya. The Surya that you see, which is being studied by astrophysicists, this Surya is the Adi Bhautika Surya, the physical sun, the Bhuta. This is the Surya which gives you energy. This is the Surya which constantly manufactures energy through nuclear fusion. Hans Bethe, a Nobel laureate in physics, was the person who discovered the source of solar or stellar energy. We had the good fortune to meet him when we were students of the postgraduate class in physics in Chennai. He had come for an international conference, a sage-like person, Hans Bethe. He discovered the source of solar energy as being nuclear fusion. I don't want to give you a lesson in physics. You may know that there are two kinds of phenomena in nuclear physics which give you energy. One is nuclear fission, the other is nuclear fusion. Nuclear fission is the breaking up of a heavy atom meaning with large atomic number of neutrons and protons. It spontaneously breaks up into two smaller parts. And in the process, energy is released. Einstein gave this most famous equation, E equals mc square. E is the energy, m is the mass, and c is the velocity of light in vacuum. The energy released from a mass m is the product of the mass and the square of the velocity of light. Huge amount of energy is released from a very small mass. This is nuclear fission. We now have nuclear reactors which produce nuclear energy. Fission reactors. There's another phenomenon in nature in which much greater energy is released to nuclear fusion. It's just the opposite of fission. Fission is large nuclei splitting up into two smaller parts. Nuclear fusion is the tiniest nucleus, the hydrogen, fusing with its companion nuclei, which are also hydrogen, thereby forming a helium nucleus. And in the process, once again, energy is released. Tremendous amount of energy is released. And the reactors which act on the principle of nuclear fusion are called fusion reactors. And controlling nuclear fusion is extremely difficult. It is almost impossible to have controlled nuclear fusion unless in very, very regulated circumstances. So fusion reactors are very risky and to control them is not easy. But nature, our divine mother nature, Mahamaya, Prakriti, is happily, nonchalantly, effortlessly engaged in nuclear fusion, creating energy and controlling it. Where are we compared to our Divine Mother? All the intelligences of all the scientists put together is not even 1/1,000,000th of what the Divine Mother Kali or the Divine Mother Mahamaya or the Prakriti has. Prakriti is controlling nuclear fusion in the sun and the stars and producing tremendous amount of energy, and the sun is pouring energy on the earth every moment. How much of energy the sun is giving? Light and heat. If for a moment during total solar eclipse, the sun is eclipsed for a few microseconds, the whole earth becomes so cold. If it continues for some more minutes, we will all perish. This is the glory of the sun. That's why our ancients always praised the sun as a symbol of luminosity. And the sun was a great god who was worshipped. Surya Devata. It is not a superstition. We, foolishly educated in the Western culture, think it's all physical, everything is only physical for us. No. The divinity attached to it is because how does Prakriti or nature make the nuclear fusion possible, control it, regulate it, day after day, year after year, for millions and billions of years, it is pouring so much of energy in the form of light and heat on the earth and the planets. How is it possible? Don't you, in amazement, wonder, and great joy and devotion, raise your heart in prayer and say, O tat savitur varenyam bhargo devasya dhimahi dhyo yo na prachodayat. This prayer must have welled up in the heart of the Rishi. Seeing the sun, what a glorious sun. And that sun, in the physical form, is the Adi Bhautika form, is the nuclear fusion, energy producing huge machinery. And that sun in the Adi Daivika form, which is the divinity giving us so much of energy, free. So why don't you raise your heart in prayer and say, oh sun, thank you so much, thanks. You give me so much of energy, so much of light and heat, unasked, free. I once asked my students to make a calculation. What is the calculation about? Can you find out the amount of energy in the form of light and heat that the sun gives to the earth in 1 hour? Or to speak of 1 day. And find out how many units of energy, units of electricity we know in the present day, and what is the cost of the unit of electricity charged by various electricity organizations and companies. We have in West Bengal CESC, Calcutta Electric Supply Corporation. And now recently there has been a huge furor. The electric bills have been too high and then something should happen, etc. So find out how much it would cost for us to pay the sun for the amount of electric energy that he gives in an hour or a day. And you will be astonished, flabbergasted, dumbfounded, confused, frightened to see that the wealth of the entire universe will not be sufficient to pay the electric bill of the sun for 1 day. And he has been giving us the heat and the light free of cost, day after day, month after month, year after year, for millions and billions of years. And we, ungrateful human beings, do not have the sense to raise our heart and prayer and say, oh sun tat savituru varenyam bhargo devasya dhimahi, I bow down to you, please bless me, please awaken my consciousness. Can't you do that? Are we brutes? Can't we have this amount of gratefulness? This is what the ancient Hindus did. They said, pray to the sun. He is the glorious great God. And the sun is the greatest God, Pratyaksha Devata. And the entire Veda, in one sense, is devoted to the praise of the sun god, Surya Devata. Surya is everywhere. Because through Surya you get light, heat, illumination, energy, power. And Surya is given as an example of a karma yogi. Doesn't want anything from anybody, goes on working without stopping for a moment. I always funnily imagine if the Surya goes to Brahma, his boss, and then says, oh Brahma, I am tired. I have been working and slogging for millions of years continuously. Please give me a holiday for just half a day. The entire solar system will break. Simply it will perish. That's why in the Taittiriya Aranyaka they said, Pashya Suryasya Shremanam na tandrayate charans charaiveti. Listen, learn from the sun. Pashya, see the glory of the sun. Suryasya Shremanam, the glory, the greatness of the sun. Na tandrayate, it doesn't stop for a moment, it doesn't sleep for a moment, it doesn't doze off for a moment. What does it do? Charans, charaiveti, charan, it goes on, moves on. So what is the lesson? You children, you also keep moving, don't stop. So Ramakrishna says in the gospel, keep moving, never stop for a moment. Stop not till the goal is reached, as Swami Vivekananda said. Even after the goal is reached, you move on so that others could reach the goal. That is the Adhikarika Purushas or the Avatara Purushas. Keep on moving. Don't stop for a moment. Pashya Suryasya Sremanam na tandrayate charans charaiveti. Swami Vivekananda is so fond of this verse, this mantra from the Taittiriya Aranyaka from the Vedas. Charaiveti, charaiveti. Keep moving, don't stop. Don't be depressed, don't cry. Don't stop for a moment. Cheerfully, happily, march on to the goal. Neither left nor right, but straight to the goal, as Swami Vivekananda said. This Surya is the Devata, Adi Daivika aspect of the Surya. Now, the question arises, what is that to me? This is a deep psychological and philosophical question which our ancient have raised. Anything in the universe should have a relationship with me, otherwise it is useless. So I need not realize the meaning of anything apart from myself. That's what we feel. I am content with myself, but I have to impinge with the universe. I have to constantly interact with this universe. I cannot go into my shell and say I am happy with my cocoon. No, you have to interact with the whole universe. And in interacting with this whole universe, you realize you are deeply connected with the universe, and all that is there in the entire universe is in you. Sayaschayam purushe yaschasavaditye sa ekaha saya evam vit. Taittiriya Upanishad. That which is the Purusha in that great sun, Savitra Mandala, and that Purusha which is within you, the Jivatma, both are connected, both are one. This is an extraordinary revelation which came to the Rishis. The microcosm within, the Jivatma, and the macrocosm without, which is the Brahman or the Savitra Mandala Madhyavarti, Parabrahman, they are one. So there are three aspects: the Adi Bhautika aspect, the physical aspect of the sun, Adi Daivika aspect, the divine aspect is the Devata, whom you worship and adore in gratefulness and supplication, and the Adhyatmika aspect, in which you see that sun which is out there is your own self. So every object in the universe is thought to be of three aspects: Adi Daivika, Adi Bhautika, and Adhyatmika. So we will develop this idea more and more. We'll go a little deeper till we come to the Gayatri Mantra. Then we'll see how the Gayatri merges into the Om and how Om takes up to the supreme reality. Shandha Gayatri te loy hoy, Gayatri abar Omkare loy hoy. Simple two spontaneously spoken, apparently simple sentences with the most profound significance and meaning, which through our prayer, meditation, supplication, and contemplation we will try to unravel. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampa Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.